somewhere, and I'm like, let's flip through the postulates, and they're like, it's on this page, and I'm like, God, are there a lot of postulates? To say nothing of the theorems, like a gazillion theorems, and they're all like, that line, congruent triangles, and it's very, it's really annoying in terms of trying to remember. Now he's in, whoa! Hey, it's another night of the show. My nephew, I'm trying to help him with homework, and it's driving me mad. I swear. I'm not smart enough to be in 10th grade, is my conclusion. I didn't have trouble with 8th grade. 10th grade, starting to give me issues. I don't think I could get a diploma again. Certainly, I couldn't stick with it. And I don't even want to talk about how it'd be heck to be back in high school. Although, I think the second time around I could do it better. Maybe. I mean, it remains to be seen. Tonight, I got a lot of topics, so I got to get moving. Anyway, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is Halloween. Today is the day after Halloween, which I think is All Saints' Day or something. Last night was Halloween Eve. We always try and give out Halloween to the trick-or-treaters, so we go buy a huge bowl of candy, and we give out comics. So we got a big thing of comics, and we're at our house, gleefully waiting for the trick-or-treaters to arrive, and they very rarely do. Last night we got 11 trick-or-treaters, so we gave each trick-or-treater a handful of candy, and we still got a lot of candy left. I don't know why we buy so much candy. I think it's because we progressively forget how few people we get each year. The average is 8. I've kept track. I have a graph with some paper. Every year I update the average and the median and, the standard derivation and the second derivative just to see if the trend line itself is changing over time. It's not. No, it's generally 8 to 12 people come to my house for Halloween candy, which is a pity because apparently I give you a handful of candy and a comic book. Like if I were 8, I would have my house circled on Google Maps. Word of my house would spread through the valley. Like, yeah, there's this house where they give you a handful of candy. And if you can tell them a joke, they give you more. And a comic book. I'd think the kids, they got the Facebook. They got the MySpace. Why am I not popular? That's what I want to know. Just tell me. I know my luck, I'm probably that creepy guy. Get off my lawn. That's the way it goes. Anyway, so for Halloween, this year we took over the task of having the annual Halloween party for reasons I'm not going to go into, but they're icky. So we had the big Halloween party over at our place this year, and in years we've always gone to this Halloween party the last couple of years. It's huge. It was like a house, like 100 people would come, and I'd know none of them because I don't have friends. But there'd be a lot of people there, and they'd all be drinking heavily. So by 11 o'clock, you know a lot of them, and a lot of them know you. And then the next year they have no idea who you are again because of the drinking heavily part, largely. But there's a lot of people. So we had it at our place this year. We had it at the clubhouse because there's 100 people aren't going to fit in my house. And even if they could, I wouldn't let them. Because I've seen what those people do at a party, and it ain't pretty. My carpet's crap, but I still don't want that to happen to my carpet. Okay, so we invited a bunch of people. We used technology. It used to be if you wanted to have a party, you had to mail out little paper invitations. I recall in kindergarten, I wanted to invite this kid in my class to my birthday party, but all I knew was his name. And in kindergarten, name equals first name. So I believe I said I want Christopher to come, and I'm sure my mother went, Christopher who? And I went, Christopher in kindergarten. And she went, and I don't recall if he came or not. Maybe she tried to find him, but these days you got the Evite. You put everyone's email address in. You please come to our party. We invited like 100 people. Like 30 of them came. Like another 20 of them RSVP'd, and half the people on our list didn't bother to RSVP. No, these people are lame, and we hate you. Okay, but that said, so we invited a bunch of people to the party, and we bought a lot of alcohol. A lot of alcohol, like lots of money was spent on alcohol. And let me tell you, my friends suck because I have a lot of alcohol debt. Huge amounts of it. We bought, we're at Costco and we're like, we need to buy beer. So people might want to drink a variety. So let's get, a 24-pack of the Sierra Pale Ale. And, we'll get a variety pack of wherever that brewer is. in,
Sam Adams?
no, not Sam Adams. It's the guy in downtown San Jose, the little microbrewery. He's local. Gordon Biersch. We bought a thing of that. And we're like, hey, it's great. We got, a wide variety of beer for those beer drinking friends of ours, as well as soft drinks. And we had, a case of Mike's and everything else. And, well, we drank 2 beers. Which means before I had, let's say, no beer in my house. Because that's probably close. I might have had 1 beer in my house because people have left it at parties before. And occasionally I'll pour a beer in when I'm making brats because you got to boil them in beer because it makes them better. I don't know why, but I'm from Wisconsin and everyone knows you got to boil them in beer. It makes them better. So now I have 46 beers in my house. Now, I have a lot of alcohol in my house. I obviously have the 46 beers, and I have 24 mics. Well, 23, because someone drank one since the party. But 24 mics, and, we bought big bottles of vodka and everything else. And it's really sad. Like a while, years ago, someone came to my house and they looked at the top of my fridge, which is where we keep all the alcohol, and they're like, God, you people must be total lushes, because the top of the fridge is just packed with alcohol. It's like, we used to put it in the cabinet up there, but then there was too much for the cabinet, so we start stacking it in front of the cabinet, and, it starts overflowing, so it's kind of on the counter next to the edge of the fridge, because that's kind of logically near the top of the fridge. And I'm like, no, we actually don't drink much at all. That's why we have a lot of alcohol. Like, if you go to an alcoholic's house, there should be no alcohol in it. He's drunk it. Okay? If you go to a house and the top of the fridge is packed with booze, you're at the house of people that don't really drink much, but like to think that occasionally they do drink. So, like, they'll be at the supermarket and they'll think, wow, we should have some rum in the house in case we want to make something that puts rum in it. I think daiquiris have rum in them, so that's what I'm going to say. But the nattering bottom of the screen guy will probably correct me. But so you buy a big bottle of rum, and then a while later you still have a big bottle of rum, and then time goes by and you have a big bottle of rum because you don't actually really make daiquiris that often. Like, it's very rare that I'm sitting in my house thinking I should be really plastered right now. Conveniently, I have a lot of alcohol. No, that never happened. Okay. So we had this Halloween party. We bought all this booze. All of our friends came, and truthfully, we a fair number of us drank. And we had a big thermos full of kamikazes we made. And I don't know what's in kamikazes, but these were very good. Which I know because I had a fair number of them. And we'd specified costume party. We'd said, it's better if you come in costume. So people came in costume. And I realized as I was standing at my party what the problem was here, which is people would come to the party and I had no idea who they were for a while. Like my friend Steve came. And I didn't know for like an hour that Steve was there. Maybe half an hour. Because Steve was dressed as a wizard. He had this big glue-on beard and the hat and the thing. And it's like, it didn't look like Steve. I mean, it looked like Steve dressed like a wizard, but like so many guys with a hat and a big beard and a thing on look like Steve dressed like a wizard. In fact, pretty much every guy with a hat and a beard and a thing on looks like Steve dressed like a wizard. We had these 3, well, I'm going to say these 3 tall witches came. Very tall, dressed like witches, kind of sexy witches, kind of scanty clothing, and I was talking to Loretta, and I was like, are those Marines friends? And she's like, no, they're your friends. And I'm like, really? And I looked, and yeah, one of them was my friends. It was a guy. Which is why the being dressed as a sexy witch thing had thrown me off. But yeah, that was a friend of mine from work. The other 2 I didn't know, so I don't feel as bad about not recognizing them. But see, people come at parties and you got no idea who they are, really. People could have just dropped by our party in costume, and we would have all thought they were someone else's friends. Heck, it may have happened. Oh, well. Oh, and lastly, to that party, and I'll come back to this. Like I said, although I don't drink a lot, I do think it's important to be able to drink quickly. Specifically, no one likes waiting for drinks. Like when you're at a party and someone's like, would you like a drink? You're like, yes. You don't want to wait 10 minutes for a drink to show up. You want a drink to be there quickly. And I, in particular, like blended drinks, like the daiquiris, like the pina coladas. But the problem with those at a big party is you got to make them in a blender. Specifically, a tiny little blender. You put like 2 cups of ice in, you put some booze in, you hit blend. Now everyone hears the blender and they're like, ooh, you're making daiquiris. And now you're making daiquiris for the next 45 minutes because you're just putting ice in, you're blending, you're putting ice in, you're blending. This is not the kind of thing I do. As you know, I'm an engineer. I view this as a problem to be solved. So I thought, how could I quickly make blended drinks? And then I thought, we just build a really big blender, like huge, like, the size of a train car. But I was like, I don't want to buy that much glass. Because if that much glass, if your blender explodes, you're going to die when you got a lot of glass and everything. So anyway, I made myself an industrial-sized blender. I started with a big 10-gallon plastic bucket, and I put a garbage disposal in it. And I had something where I could put a thing full of ice in the top, pour some booze in, hit start, and like 30 seconds later, we had 30 people's worth of blended drinks. It was fabulous. People loved it. It was the talk of the town. I've gotten calls from major news media outlets that were like, can we see the blender in operation? Like, yes, you can, but you got to fly me to a place where you'd talk about blended drinks. I think that'd be New Orleans. I think it'd be Matt Lauer interviewing me in New Orleans talking about the blender, is what I would suggest the way things go. Other things. So for Halloween, I was dressed as a pirate. Because like we said, it's classic Halloween for the costumes. Pirate, classic Halloween costume. Although I wasn't a regular pirate. I was a pirate accountant. Specifically, I was dressed as a pirate with a tie and a shirt. Because you got to think, there had to be pirate accountants, right? I mean, you're on a pirate ship, you're getting treasure. How do you equitably divide up the treasure? You don't want to just divide it into tenths if you had 10 pirates or something, because maybe some pirates did more work than other pirates. Maybe some pirates had been there longer. Pirates got to have a retirement plan of some kind, because you can't be a pirate forever, is my point. I think you can be a pirate for about 4.5 years in general before the peg leg, gives out. And you fall over the side or something. I don't recall there being an awful lot of old pirates, is my point. So if you're a pirate, you want to plan for your fiscal future. And for that, you need a pirate accountant. And if you run a pirate ship, or perhaps a fleet of pirate ships, you need someone to make sure that your sub-pirates aren't stealing from you. Because they're pirates, for God's sakes. If they can get away with it, they're gonna. So I invented pirate accountant. And all night long, I went around saying things like, "Yar! Your columns got to add up." Because that's what a pirate accountant would say, or, "Avast! Prepare to be audited." Pirate accountant. It was fabulous. People kept all night going, "What are you dressed as?" And I'd go, "Pirate." And they'd go, "Tie?" And I'd go, "Accountant pirate." And they'd go, "Ah!" But they were drunk, so that was probably part of it. I'd actually gone to Ren Fair dressed as the pirate accountant as well. And there I got roughly the same number of looks, and people would say, well, they'd talk in middle whatever English, like, "Pray tell, what are thee?" And I'd go, "Arr, pirate accountants. Ernst Senior and Son." See, that's a pirate joke. That's an accounting joke, really, because these days it's, Ernst Jr. So you got to think someday there was an Ernst Senior who had an accounting firm, and he was probably a pirate. That's my point. Here's my other point about Ren Fairs. People were talking to me. They were saying, "Keith, why do you go to Ren Fairs? It seems dumb. Like it's just a bunch of people pretending it's the 1400s. And the 1400s sucked. I mean, think of all the diseases and royalty. And the royal people with diseases." And I'm like, well, yes, but that's not why we're going to Ren Fairs. Mostly I think people go to Ren Fairs so they can buy stuff to enable them to go to Ren Fairs. I think it's a self-sustaining system. Once you've gone once, you're like, I could go back, but I really got to buy a lot of crap so I can fit in better. And then once you bought a lot of crap, you got to go back, otherwise you wasted your money. It's like a positive feedback loop. I expect by like the 2700s, 95% of whatever economy is left will be based around people buying things and going to Ren Fairs. or giving money to performers at Ren fairs, who will, of course, have to buy things so that they can perform at Ren fairs. And the remaining 5% of the economy, I think, will be Viagra sold over the interweb. We're getting that place. We're getting close to that place anyway, people. I mean, it's... Oh, well. In terms of the rest of my life, so like recently, we went to Austin a couple weeks ago. And I know you're saying, Keith, why'd you go to Austin? It's in Texas, for God's sakes. I'm like, yes, it's in Texas, but I'm told it's the part of Texas that doesn't suck. And having been there, I can report back that's 40% true. Parts of Austin didn't suck. Now, the roads sucked. So we rented a car. We're driving around Austin. They don't know how to rake roads there. And after like a day and a half of driving around, I realized why. It's because land doesn't cost money in Texas. See, the state is huge. And land is like free. You know, like people are like, hey, would you like some land with your fries? And I was like, no. I think I'd have to pay tax on it then, wouldn't I? And they're like, oh, we almost got you. But see, land is free. So when they're laying out their roads, it never occurred to them to do it correctly and concisely. So they just put roads everywhere. There's like roads swooping over roads, and there's 2 roads next to each other going the same direction with 2 different names. And you're like, why am I on this road and then on that road? And you're like, well, you wanted to be on Spirit of Texas Highway, and that's Texas Rose Highway. And you're like, what's your people's problem? Just get some nice normal set of roads. You got exits on the right, you got carpool lanes on the left. Everyone knows how to drive on those kind of roads, but not in Texas.
No.
In Texas, you've got roads, and you're like, well, I want to get off. And they're like, well, sometimes the exits are on the left, sometimes they're on the right. Why are they on the left? I don't know. But you're like, weird. I hated driving in Texas. Anyway, we're there. We went there to visit our friend Barbie, because she, for some reason, moved to Texas. She must hate to drive. Anyway, she moved to Texas a couple months ago, so we promised we'd go out and visit her. We went out and visited her. We picked the weekend to visit her. We were going to go to a Ren fair in Texas, of course. See, it's insidious. It gets into your head, and there's nothing you can do about it. We were going to go to the Ren fair and to the Makers Fair, but then something came up, and so we didn't go to the Ren fair. So we went to the Makers Fair twice, 2 days in a row. They had one in Texas. They had one here back in March or May or some month with an M in it. May. They're telling me it was in May. See, I knew it had an M in it. We went there. They had one in Austin this time, and we walked around at it. Had a lot of fun. You know, they're kind of interesting places for me. I go because I'm an artsy, craftsy, vaguely kind of guy. Well, not artsy. Not really crafty.
Engineering.
I was going to say handy, but I'm not really handy either. Here's the thing. I like to think I can do things. Now, it turns out I can't, because I have a good memory, and it occurs to me that if I think back on all the things I was going to do, most of them either didn't get done or turned out poorly. But that doesn't change my perception of the future. See, next time I'm going to be great. Like when I plan to do something, I'm going to do it. And it'll be pretty correct the first time I do it. I won't have to go back to the hardware store to buy the same thing I already bought once because I screwed the first one up. So that's all I'm saying. So that's why I like the Makers Fair, because if you go there, it's full of people kind of like me. People except they actually do things. Now, maybe they all screwed them up the first time. I mean, well, for God's sakes, I made a margarita blender out of a garbage disposal in a bucket. And true, it did take me 3 tries to get it right, but buckets are cheap, is my point. Buckets are $6. You know, you can screw up your first bucket and really not be that bad off. I tried not to screw up the garbage disposal. That was $90. You can't screw up 3 garbage disposals because that gets pricey after a while. But buckets are cheap. So I have a bucket with a hole in the bottom that's no use to me whatsoever. I was thinking of taking it back. Like, I'd like to return this bucket. And then they'd say, what's wrong with it? And I'd say, there's a hole in the bottom of it. And they're like, really? Was the hole in the bottom of it when you bought it? And I go, no. And go, then why do you want to return it? And I'm like, well, the hole's in the wrong place. At that point, I assume that they'd just give me my money back. I mean, it's $6 and it'll go away. If they don't give me $6, I might stay there and talk to them more. Okay, so we're in Austin. I'm walking around the Makers Faire, just talking to people, and not everyone there is genius, but a lot of people seem pretty smart. Some people seem just a little, well, in terms of the really smart people. So I'm like walking by this popular science booth where there's this guy demonstrating things, and I'm like, wait, isn't that Theodore Gray? And like no one near me knows who. I'm like, that's Theodore Gray. So I go over and I go, are you Theodore Gray? And he goes, yes, I am. And I'm like, why are you here? Okay? He's like the guy, one of the guys that invented Mathematica. He's freaky smart. And he's just standing in Austin handing out posters. Like, here, would you like a poster? And I'm like, I would love a poster. He's like, posters are $2. And I'm like, no, I don't want a poster. Because that's $2 I'm never going to see again. I'm gonna lose the poster. I mean, it's early in the day. I'm going to carry it around all day. Can I come back later and get a poster? He's like, sure. So I was going to go back later and get a poster, but they'd sold out. So I felt vaguely bad because I would have bought a poster from him because he's freaky smart. He invented the periodic table. By which, I mean, he built this huge table in his house that has all these little compartments in them, and in each compartment, he put the corresponding element from the periodic table. So like, if you open the one for iron, there's a piece of iron in there. Apparently he has some troubles with the radioactive part of the table. I was okay with, him not having, well, let's say, Americum, which I think has a half-life of like a billionth of a second. It's like even if you got a lot of it, a long time later you'd have none of it. But he built this table, and he's cool. Who else did we see? We saw these guys. Some of these guys that had made musical Tesla coils. Now, like I said, at the last Makers Faire, they had this huge Tesla coil that was just amazing to watch because they'd turn it on and lightning would be arcing back and forth and the hair in your arms would be standing up and you'd be like, this is cool. Now, these guys had smaller Tesla coils, but they could play music on them. And by that I mean they had determined all the frequencies of energy they were putting in, and the Tesla coils make noise, when they're going off because they're resonating or vibrating or something. So they had tuned them, and then they had connected them up so they could play them as MIDI instruments. So there was a guy, with a MIDI keyboard who could play the Tesla coils, which is just crazy, crazy, crazy. I mean, it's like, people are like, well, that's cool. You made a Tesla coil that could play music, but then you go one step beyond by making it a MIDI instrument. Who else did we saw? In the back, there was this Jacob's ladder just standing there. And there was this kid standing next to it who was explaining how he'd made his Jacob's ladder with his father. He's like, yeah, my mom wasn't so hot on it, but we went out and we bought, a neon light transformer, and, it turns 120 volts into like an ungodly number of volts, like, 100,000 volts. And she's like, she was scared. And I'm like, your mom, smart woman. 100,000 volts is a lot. And you make the little Jacob's ladder, and we're talking with him. He's like 14, making crap like this with his dad. I never made a Jacob's ladder when I was a child. I wasn't allowed to play with electricity, really. I will tell you, once I made, for Halloween, speaking of Halloween, I made one of them chairs with a lot of nails in it, for a Halloween exhibit, because, they're torture devices. And then I left it in the basement. And then months later, I think my dad stepped on it. I don't think I was allowed to make Halloween things after that. Oh, well. Remember, I was talking about being handy and crafty. Then I said I have to redo things a lot. It's like I buy Lego. I love Lego. I had Lego as a child. Then I went to college and didn't really have Lego because there's no room for it. And now that I'm older, I still buy Lego. Specifically, lately I've been buying the Lego Star Wars kits. When I was young, we didn't buy kits. I didn't even know Lego made kits, really. I just had a big box of Lego, and you'd take pieces out and you'd build something. Now, of course, you buy a kit, and they give you directions, and you put the Lego together in the right pieces, because I got no creativity left. I don't know what I'd do with a big box of Lego. But see, here they give me, hey, look, if you follow these steps, you can have the Death Star. And I was like, great. So I bought me the Death Star model, and I got the little instructions, and I have like 3,000 Lego pieces, so I'm like staring, okay, I need to find 8 of these. They're too long, and they're gray, and they're this size, and I'm staring, and I'm digging through boxes of Lego, and I sit in my living room, and it takes me forever. Like, I think I bought this Lego kit like 2 years ago. It's still sitting in a box in my house. But I'm crafty, because I have it. See, without it, I'd just be a boring, non-crafty guy, whereas with it, I'm a crafty guy with unassembled Lego in my house. Yeah, that's the way it goes. See, I talked about those. Oh, here. Another guy I met in Texas. I talked to him for maybe 15, 20 minutes before his phone rang, and he had to talk to somebody, and I viewed that as a time to stop talking to him, because I think we had reached the end of our conversation. He wants to go to the moon, which I think is a great goal as a species, have colonies in the moon. But he's like, that's never going to work. We need to get like 100 people and go to the moon. I'm like, I don't think 100's enough. I recall that Apollo 13 movie. I think they had like 8,000 people there, and they didn't even get to the moon. Like, they tried and something blew up. And he's like, no, I bet we can do it with a couple hundred people. I'm like, okay. And he's like, if everyone put in $1,000 and you had 250 people, that's $250,000. And I'm like, yes. He's like, and if you had 25,000 people, that's, $2.5 million or whatever the math is. And I'm like, yes. And he's like, I bet we could go to the moon for that. And I'm like, no, you couldn't. I don't even think you could buy rocket fuel for that much money, because the moon is far away. And in addition to being far away, it's far away in the up direction. Up is hard, is my point to him. And he was talking about the colonies. He's like, but once we got there, think of what we could do. And I'd be like, well, you could write cards to people. I'm on the moon! Which, truthfully, I'd pay money for that. Like, just be able to call someone up on the cell phone and go, oh, and how are you? Oh, yeah. Oh, guess where I am? I'm on the moon! But they'd know, because there's like a quarter-second lag between the moon and the Earth in light speed. So they'd be like, why is this phone connection so bad? And then you could be like, oh, I'm on the moon. The cell signals here are very, very bad. What's worse is I'm talking to him. And in the back of my head, I'm like, well, we could go to the moon. And then I'm talking to him, and he's like, $1,000? That's really not that much money, is it? I could give him $1,000. We could go to the moon. Then it occurred to me, no. Me giving you $1,000 is not going to get me to the moon. I am too old to go to the moon. I can barely go to Austin. Like, I got to Austin and I felt like crap. I think if I tried to go to the moon, it wouldn't be pretty, is my point. Like, I'd get there and I'd be all grumpy and tired and I'd sleep through it. Like, we got to Austin, we had to sleep late the next morning. For God's sakes, I can't even travel to Austin without being, oh, well, I'm out of time. I had so much more things to talk about, but I guess we'll talk about them next time on Keith Explains. Okay, what was I talking about beforehand? Awards. Oh, so I didn't even get to awards. I got the follow-up sheets for my hometown award. It broke down why they judged it. I think you get like 100 points. My average is 90. Turns out I didn't win a hometown. And then I was reading through them. And these people have a lot of different. You can't give this more than 2 points, really? Just think.